More reaction to the promotion of Josh Grizzard as offensive coordinator, that and more on today's episode of Locked On Bucs.
You are Locked On Buccaneers, your daily Tampa Bay Buccaneers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, and welcome into this WTSP edition of Locked On Bucs, your daily podcast covering the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank you for making Locked On Bucs your first listen review every day. Don't forget you can subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. And of course, you can follow along on Twitter. I am James Yarcho at JYarcho_Bucs. He is Evan Klosky at EKloskyWTSP. We are your credentialed members of the media covering the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And of course, you can check out everything that Evan is doing there on 10 Tampa Bay and at 10tampabay.com. And you can become a Locked On Bucs insider, where you're going to get news, rumors, updates, general thoughts, one-on-one conversations with me via text message. Go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnBucs or click the link in the show notes to become an insider today. This episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. We have an insider mailbag question for Evan talking about the Bucs making a move at edge rusher. So, of course, you know we're going to talk a little bit more about the Myles Garrett situation. And then we're busting out the crystal ball Super Bowl edition. Thought that'd be fun. We're going to see if the ball has been refurbished, is a little more clear, and Evan can tell us what's going to happen on Sunday.
We didn't have to completely get a new ball, but we definitely did need to tinker on some things.
Yeah, just a little bit of polish, a little bit of elbow grease, really shine it up. But we are going to start this one off by saying, after yesterday's episode came out, it was announced that the Jaguars, because of course they did, requested permission to interview Mike Greenberg for their vacant GM position. And then right before we started recording this, Rick Stroud dropped the news that Mike Greenberg had withdrawn his name from consideration, and it had more to do with his time with the franchise, his loyalty to the Glazers, his loyalty to Jason Light than anything about the Jacksonville franchise. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge, I guess.
But and just my quick thought on it, and my concerns with thinking that Mike would take that job is, why would he want to be the number 2 in Jacksonville when he's already the number 2 in Tampa, considering that Spytek just left to become the GM with the Raiders? So, I mean, he is second in command now. Before, it was sort of this shared role between him and Spytek. The lane is cleared. So it's really, he is the right-hand man. And I don't know if you envision your first GM job kind of capitulating to the head coach, but you have to really, it's such a rare occurrence to have the head coach hire the GM, and you have to really be in sync with that individual. And not to say that there's any strife or anything with Liam or the Jags or whatever that might be. It's just, he's going to be the number 2 there, and he'll have the nice title, but Mike's been around long enough. I don't think he needs the title. The Buccaneers will do right by him. If he wants a raise, you're going to give him a raise, right? If he wanted that title, Jason would get elevated. So I just think that there's look, he's been around a long time in his community with this franchise, and I think that if that Jets job might have opened up, maybe that one made a lot of sense for him. But I don't know. Why mess with Happy for something that was a fairly lateral move outside looking in?
Yeah. So, the contract master, the capologist, he is back. So, Myles Garrett confirmed. Evan, since our last episode together, the Bucs promoted Josh Grizzard to offensive coordinator, and there seems to be a lot of excitement about that move, not just from the fans, but of course players that were at the Pro Bowl. Baker Mayfield, Mike Evans, they were talking about how happy they were that Grizzard got this promotion. But what are your thoughts on the hire as the Bucs opted to keep things in-house this time rather than some of these outside candidates who, one already got an offensive coordinator position? I know there's still some chatter about potentially Nate Shieldhouse landing with Jacksonville in that role and things of that nature. But the Bucs said, we're going to keep it here. We're going to keep the continuity. What were your thoughts on the promotion of Grizzard?
The thing we've learned about the Buccaneers is typically when they find their guy, the search stops, right? That the last 2 years, it was double-digit interviews, and they got to that last person, and boom, hired. Now, it wasn't double-digit this time around, but it seems pretty clear that, first off, there were still a handful of names out there who could have interviewed for this gig, and especially in-house options. And for Josh to kind of step in that room and present the plan that can make them feel pretty comfortable about things, I think showcases the trust that Jason and Todd have in Josh. And something that Baker Mayfield talked about, which I think should not be understated, is that Miami kept Josh through multiple coaching changes. That doesn't happen often. You have to be a special individual. And the role changed a little bit, but he was kept because there was a level of respect there. Maybe, Mike McDaniel saw a Yale guy and said, he's got to be nice. But even beyond that, I think that he's been opened up to some pretty good offensive schemes, obviously knows this offensive scheme really well, and was in charge of third downs. And Baker said, he was running those third down meetings and had a large say in them. And when you have a 51% success rate, conversion rate on third down, it's hard not to be optimistic about what he could bring to this team. But yeah, there's the element of him not calling plays, and I'm sure Todd Bowles will bring back those call-it periods in OTAs, in training camp, really work with him on that to make sure that he's up to speed and understanding how to do some of those things. But I'm listening to the players, understanding that there's going to be a lot of continuity. It's hard not to like the hire. I'm not saying it's a home run hire by any means yet. We just don't know. There's uncertainty here, but certainly I'm on the optimistic end with the hire and understanding that, hey, some of the stuff that they did last year, they're not going to reinvent the wheel. They're going to build upon that. And Josh is a great person to really launch that stepping stone into the 2025 season.
Yeah. And one of the other things that a lot of people have referenced, I referenced it myself. I'm curious your thoughts. Do you think the fact that they're bringing or promoting Grizzard, not really bringing him back, he didn't really leave, but promoting Grizzard and knowing that the offense is going to have some continuity, it's going to have some wrinkles, it's not going to be exactly the same, he's going to implement some of his own ideas, obviously, but do you think that helps in the quest to bring Chris Godwin back?
Yeah, every OC has their own wrinkle on everything. Like, just because Liam Cohen came from the Sean McVay tree doesn't mean that he goes out there and runs Sean McVay's offense, right? He's got his own twist to it. Even Sean McVay at the end of his season was like, man, not in these exact words, but was like, man, we got, some of the creative stuff that Liam Cohen was doing out there in Tampa, ... And that Sean's looking a little bit to him, being like, oh, snap, that was pretty good. The key is, My big question with Josh and what I assume he's got a good grasp of, considering he won the job and Jason and Todd gave him the approval, is can he maintain the blocking schemes, the creative ways to do the blocking in the trenches to make sure that this offense and this rushing attack can still be as formidable as it was. The blocking scheme is what really sunk Bobby Slowick in Houston. He did not adjust well in the trenches. Liam was a savant out there. Outside of the Detroit game, I thought that was a little bit mismanaged, maybe a little bit of hubris, thinking that school can handle some of that stuff. But otherwise, I think that everything should be good to go, and you would want Chris Godwin in the fold, considering A, it helps you from a salary cap perspective in 2025 anyway, but B, he's got plenty of juice left in the tank. You know the role that he works in. You know how this offense worked around him. He can handle it. So, when you talk about the wide receivers on this team, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are a scarier unit when you say Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Jalen McMillan. They're not as scary when you say Mike Evans, Jalen McMillan, right? Like, we can fill out the depth pieces, but ultimately that three-headed monster is like, whoa, versus having Mike and Jalen. And then also what happens if one gets injured? Now you're really thin. So at least now you have proof of concept. If Chris or Mike or Jalen goes down, you understand how to navigate those waters too, which was great experience this past year.
All right. Well, we have an insider mailbag question for Evan about the Bucs need at edge rusher. That is coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Bucs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. The big game is almost here, and there's no better way to make it even more exciting than with Prize Picks, the best place for daily fantasy sports. With over 10 million members and billions in winnings awarded, Prize Picks makes it fun and simple to get in on the action. With Prize Picks, you simply pick more or less on player stats like total passing yards, rushing touchdowns, receptions, and for a shot to win up to 1,000 times your money. You can make your picks in less than 60 seconds, and whether you're looking for a flex play to boost your payout or you want to cash out quickly, Prize Picks has got you covered. With over 10 million members and billions in winnings, it's clear that people are loving this platform. Download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL, all lowercase, all one word, and you're going to get $50 instantly after your first $5 lineup. That's right, $50 instantly when you play just $5. Prize Picks, run your game. Thank you again for making Locked On Bucs your first listen review every day. The new Locked On NFL is here, and it's 2 shows every day. You got the Madman Tyler Rowland kicking off your morning. Then you can stop by the barbershop with Tony Wiggins for some real NFL talk. Add in the Locked On local experts. You get unprecedented NFL insight, hot opinions, detailed breakdowns, all in 30 minutes. It's a new Locked On NFL, and it's twice a day. So make it your second listen at the new Locked On NFL on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. All right, Insider Reggie. Shout out to Reggie. He's a recent insider.
What up, Reg?
He reached out to me yesterday with a mailbag question that I thought would be perfect for you, because I talked on yesterday's show about realistic trade options for the Bucs, whether that's trading them away or trading for them. And I brought up 2 edge rushers in that conversation, Trey Hendrickson and Myles Garrett. Both would be very difficult moves to pull off, but Reggie wrote in and he asked, with the Myles Garrett news, the Bucs desperately need an upgrade on pass rush. Who is the best option to pursue this offseason? Myles Garrett, Josh Sweat, or Maxx Crosby, and what's the cost of each, do you think? Now, I don't think Crosby is going to be available now with some of the changes that the Raiders have made. It seems like, because you brought him up a few weeks ago, and then I continued to talk about him. But it seems like he's kind of rejuvenated now with the hiring of Pete Carroll. They just got Chip Kelly at offense coordinator. He could be available, but what do you think is the best option here for the Bucs?
Yeah, we'll see with Max. When Pete Carroll called out Max specifically in the press conference, that seemed like a signal to me, like, oh, they might not want to move on. I'm sure Spytech doesn't want to make his welcome known to Raiders Nation, saying, hey, I'm about to trade Maxx Crosby, though there is a part of me that says, as a new GM, I would love to add more picks, get more of my people in, and kind of build this team the way that I want it. But look, Maxx Crosby is – because, I mean, that's the point is can the Raiders get up to speed before Maxx Crosby kind of goes in the second part of his career trajectory? So do you want to just capitalize on it now, build a franchise that's set up 3 years from now, and you've kind of reset the clock? Those are really interesting discussions to have. I think that Maxx Crosby would be a first and a second. And I'm not going to get into the years like, oh, this first and then like next year second. I think that you're talking about a first-round pick and a second-round pick for Maxx Crosby. I think Myles Garrett is a first and a first. And maybe you got to add a sweetener with a bunch of competition around you. But I don't think you need much more. Like, I don't think you need to add in another day 1 or day 2 pick here, right? I think it's really kind of 2 firsts is the foundation, and let's just kind of get if there's a little tiny piece we got to throw in, let's talk about it. Josh Sweat, free agent. So I think that's the most fiscally responsible move when you talk about keeping all your assets and leaning on the draft. I guess I shouldn't say the most fiscally responsible. Well, it is the most fiscally responsible because Maxx Crosby and Myles Garrett would cost significant money. You would have to give them an extension. So that would also be the cheaper option. And you would also get to keep all your draft picks. And you got to remember the Bolts are missing a day 3 pick in this upcoming draft already, which I'm sure grinds Jason Light's gears because he loves those draft picks. He's done so well with them. So out of that grouping, look, if you can get Myles Garrett, you get Myles Garrett.
Yeah. Period.
End of story. He just is a special guy and really transforms the entire team. Having said that, Maxx Crosby would have a similar impact as well. So I don't hate that either. I think that Josh Sweat is probably a pretty good backup option to me. Like Myles and Max, who knows if those kind of come to fruition? I don't know if those trades are going to happen before the draft and before free agency, more importantly. So you kind of have to know that answer entering March if you're going to pass on a guy like Josh. I will say there was a comment out there from Cincinnati saying we can't pay everybody number one at their position with Trey Hendrickson. And I know you did not mention Trey Hendrickson, but I think from a draft capital standpoint, and you would again have to give him an extension and a lot of money, but from a draft capital standpoint, you're talking about a second rounder and then probably a day 3 pick. So nothing crazy here. So from a draft capital standpoint, you can get Trey Hendrickson, who would completely alter the dynamic of that D-line, just like Crosby and Myles. He would cost the least amount of draft capital, and you would get to achieve what you want to achieve. So, man, I don't think that you can go wrong on any of these. I think all 4, the Buccaneers should absolutely invest time and effort to see if they can make it happen and see if they can get these GMs on the horn willing to hit the send button. But as far as like realistic options are concerned, I think Sweat and Hendrickson are probably more realistic than going down the path of Myles and Max, as I think there's still a little bit of an uphill climb and a little bit of a question mark on whether you'll be able to get, your ducks in a row before you got to figure out like, hey, free agency starts in March, draft is in April. Like, you kind of want answers sooner rather than later.
Yeah, because if you're looking from a financial standpoint, I mean, SpotTrack has Josh Sweat's estimated market value at 18.8. So you're looking at paying around $20 million for Sweat. You're probably looking at around 24 to 26 for Hendrickson. You're looking at 25 to 30 for Crosby. You're north of 30 a year for Myles Garrett in any extension you give him. Now, granted, Garrett still has 2 years left on his deal, so you have some time to get that part of it figured out. But this is one of those situations, and I talked about it on a previous episode where it's like, okay, the Bucs bring in Myles Garrett, if they bring in Maxx Crosby, that's awesome. But also, what's the flip side of that? What is it going to cost you? Like, who are you not going to have now? Because now you have to pay these guys. Is Chris Godwin the odd man out now because you can't afford to pay 2 wide receivers north of $20 million plus?
But again, remember, bringing Chris Godwin helps your salary cap.
That is true.
In 2025. So it's not like when weighing out some options, I would say, okay, like Anthony Nelson gone, Greg Gaines gone,
right.
Golston probably doesn't make a return, or maybe Golston does. There are some options where you got to sift through it. Yeah, like hey, if we do this, maybe now we got to draft a guard, right? Like now we got to draft someone and develop them because we just burned our pick. You might want to go the Josh Sweat angle, spend less money, draft, let's say Mike Green, have him develop, and hopefully he becomes that guy. And in doing so, now, Anthony Nelson probably goes by the wayside. You save about $6 million there, and then you start playing these kind of games. But where there's a will, there's a way. Hey, Mike Greenberg's back. Look, he's a specialist in this kind of stuff. The Bucs aren't in as much cap hell as they used to be. They still haven't done all the common sense restructures, and they also can probably do some deals with Gedeke and some other folks where they can get them on the books and then push some money. And look, I don't know all the intricacies of the salary cap. I'm not going to act like I do, but I'm just saying there are ways here to manipulate the books as such to make sure you get these players in-house, and you don't have to sacrifice big names like Godwin along the way. So there's probably a way you can get Godwin, Bredesen, insert pass rusher, and bring them all back. And, you'll probably lose some other things, and you'll figure that out as you go. But, I think that there are, regardless, we're all thinking kind of the same thing of you got to get a pass rusher. There is no path to being a 2025 Super Bowl contender without upgrading and having a bona fide number one pass rusher. I think we cannot even have that discussion until that move is made. So that's the challenge for Jason and his front office, is to bring that person in, because even loving a guy like Mike Green, the odds of him being like a double-digit sack guy year one are very slim. He's going to need time to develop, so on and so forth. It's a really tough ask. So you need someone who can get in there day one, get after the QB, go. And it slots everybody on the D-line in a better spot. Yaya now becomes a top-tier 2. Cansey and Vea are now Cansey you might have to go one-on-one with in this equation, and that's going to be hell for a lot of teams. So now you've created a real problem on the D-line. But that's where you need the edge.
Yeah, 100%. And like you said, the Bucs need the alpha. Yaya Diaby's great, and he's fun. He has his moments, but he's not an alpha, at least not yet. And then, of course, you have Chris Braswell, who will have another offseason under his belt. He'll continue to develop and get better. So it'll be interesting to see how all of this shakes out. I can't imagine the reaction of Bucs Twitter if they make a move for Myles Garrett or Maxx Crosby. But where there's a will there.
And let me just say this about Yaya, right? How much did you love Jason Pierre-Paul back in the day?
Oh, yeah.
5 years ago when they won it all.
Right.
We all loved JPP, right? JPP had a big impact, but there was Shaq Barrett on the other side. They need that guy. So
and JPP only had 1 year with the Bucs where he had double-digit sacks, and it was his first year back in 2019. So even the Super Bowl year, he only had 8.5. So he was the great 1B to Shaq's 1A. Bucs got to find that 1A, and that's why it's so great that Greeny is coming back. You know what else is coming back? The crystal ball. It's back, Super Bowl edition. That is coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Bucs. Attending NFL playoff games is an unforgettable experience that brings fans together. I remember last year's divisional round in Detroit being one of the loudest environments I have ever been in. My ears were ringing for days after the game. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for events even easier. It filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. And while I wasn't attending a playoff game, I did recently use Game Time Picks to find tickets to an upcoming concert. Browsing through the deals was simple, and I found great value for all kinds of seats around the venue. The super deal that I got was especially impressive, offering the best value for the event, and the app's features like views from your seat before you buy and all-in pricing with no surprise fees at checkout make the experience smooth and reliable. Plus, the on-time ticket delivery and lowest price guarantee gave me peace of mind. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Wrapping things up here on a WTSP edition of the Locked On Bucs podcast, and it's a Super Bowl edition of the Crystal Ball, because why the heck not? It's Super Bowl week. I thought it would be fun for Evan to break out some predictions. We got the Locked On Podcast Network down on Radio Row. Shout out David Harrison and my dude Ross. They're down there doing the good work there for Locked On Radio Row. So let's talk a little Super Bowl here. I have to say this real quick before we get into all of this. I have been arguing with my sons who are rooting for the Eagles. And I was like, you understand, right? As a Buccaneers fan, you're not allowed to root for the Eagles. That's not how it works. You are backed into a corner where you have to root.
It's not a great situation here. Yeah.
And one of the things that my son said, he's like, I deal with so many Chiefs bandwagon fans at school. It's so annoying. And I said, yeah, but here's the thing. And this is my message for those Bucs fans that are considering rooting for the Eagles. There's something really satisfying about knowing that the only team to beat the Kansas City Chiefs in the Super Bowl is the Buccaneers. Just throwing that out there, just saying. There's my son uses that a lot at school. So, all right. Eagles, Chiefs, not great for anyone outside of Kansas City or Philadelphia. But Evan, that crystal ball is ready. What is your bold prediction for Super Bowl 59?
My bold prediction is that Jalen Hurts will not have a passing touchdown.
Ooh.
Yeah. And I know they're coming off a game where they had like 7 rushing touchdowns, whatever. Is that bold enough? Is that bold enough to say?
I mean, yeah, that's pretty bold. I mean, it's not very often that the Eagles go without any passing touchdowns, even though they got Saquon and they have the tush push and all that. There's still, stuff that gets done through the air with AJ and Devontae and even, dump offs to Saquon. So yeah, no passing touchdowns in the Super Bowl from Jalen Hurts. That I would give that it's not blazing, but it's hot.
Got it. So like on that sliding scale, when you get the B dubs, it's kind of like the 7 on the heat meter sort of deal.
Yeah, between a 7 and an 8, I'll put it up there. Okay. All right, who is your predictive player of the game?
Predictive player of the game will be Travis Kelce. Okay. We've seen the Eagles bleed some serious yardage against tight ends recently, right? Zach Ertz, amazing game against the Eagles. Even Tyler Higbee had a great game against the Eagles. I don't know if this is Travis's last hurrah, but playoff Kelce is a real thing. And I just cannot imagine that they're not going to make Kelce a significant part of this offense. And it's going to be just finding him constantly. And especially because I don't necessarily know how the Chiefs receivers are going to do against the Eagles secondary. It feels like a matchup where Patrick is going to be leaning on his most reliable option, which will be Kelce. So I'm all over his props. Over on the catches, over on the yards. Give me a tutty. I'm gonna ride Kelce. I've seen that movie one too many times. Sure, why not watch it again?
Yeah, unfortunately for all of us. All right, I'm going to throw this in here. I did not prepare you, but what does the crystal ball say about the halftime show? Are we going to have to listen to They Not Like Us 12 straight times, and that's the whole halftime show?
My prediction for the halftime show is that Drake is going to lose like 2 to 3 more years on when he can actually leave his home. It was a big setback at the Grammys. I mean, it was like maybe I can come out with an album in a year or two, but that hurt him. And now it's gonna be doubled down on it. It's a rough. That's the best bold prediction I can give, is that Drake will not reemerge for another 5 to 7 years.
Ah, what a shame. That's really
you hate
really
to see
unfortunate. It. Yeah, you hate to see it. Any predictions for any surprise appearances during the halftime show? I mean, we are talking about Lil Wayne's backyard. Is that a thing?
I mean, if I had to go with a prediction, I would hope that Lil Wayne gets something in there, just because, I mean, he is I know many people wanted him to be the act because it was New Orleans, but tough to know with Kendrick. Really tough to know how he's gonna do that. So I'm expecting to be blown away, because that's just, the bar is very high for Kendrick.
All right. So we're talking no passing touchdowns from Jalen Hurts. We're talking Kelsey over on all the prop bets. I have to imagine you are about to predict the Kansas City Chiefs to become the first team in NFL history to win 3 consecutive Super Bowls. What is your score prediction for this one?
We go 2017 Kansas City Chiefs. And the main thing is I keep going back to that Packers game. The Packers knew the routes that the Eagles were running. There's something not right with the passing attack from the Eagles. And I think that I'm not fully bought into the Eagles passing attack. I'm scared if Jalen Hurts gets blitzed, what's going to happen there? Going to eat a big negative. And the Chiefs should be able to manage Saquon Barkley. He'll get his, but I mean, I would imagine the Chiefs are formulating a game plan of just not allowing the home run hit, right? So I think that they'll do their job enough. On the flip side, I think the Eagles defense will also play very well and get theirs. And, I can see the Chiefs moving the ball and getting stopped in the red zone and settling for field goals, so on and so forth. So I just think it's going to be another one of those classic Chiefs grind them out games. And, I've doubted the Chiefs a lot of this season. I'm over it. I'm just going to succumb to picking them, and, until they prove me wrong, just ride them.
Yeah, you can't stop the inevitable. All right, Evan, what do we have going on over on 10 Tampa Bay and at 10tampabay.com?
Head to 10 Tampa Bay, 10tampabay.com, and the 10 Tampa Bay Plus app, as, Bucs offseason never stops. We also got the Rays beginning spring training. I can't believe it, already at the end of the week. We will hear from Kevin Cash and Eric Neander next Tuesday from Port Charlotte. And, we are going to get a little busy here, just as the Four Nations are tournaments coming up, the Four Nations face-off in hockey. Messi's coming to Tampa on the 14th. We're excited for that. And also the St. Pete Grand Prix isn't too far away either. So, man, just watch us. Watch us every night. Check us out. Just make us part of your daily scroll. And remember, at eClosky WTSP, feel free to ask me any questions if you got them.
All right. Yep. Make sure you are checking out everything going on there on 10 Tampa Bay, 10tampabay.com, and the 10 Tampa Bay Plus app. Make sure you're following on Twitter at Locked On Bucs, at JYarcho_Bucs, at eClosky WTSP. Make sure you are following along on YouTube with those notifications turned on, as well as wherever you get your podcasts. And you can become a Locked On Bucs insider. Go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnBucs or click the link in the show notes. Hope you all have an absolutely outstanding day. Stay safe, stay healthy, fire the cannons. Want to thank you so much for joining us right here on Locked On Bucs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.